Hello and welcome to my channel or my Facebook page or wherever you might be actually watching this. This video is going to be a brief conversation on final expense burial plans, funerals and things like that. If you're watching this, you might be looking for information on how to plan for your own final expenses, or even perhaps for a family member, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. And my goal here is to help you with information on making these kinds of decisions as you're planning for final expenses. Now, before we dive into different options for paying for final expenses, because there are a number of different ways to do it, it's important to understand that the cost of burials and cremation in the United States, worldwide, but in the United States, has steadily increased and in some cases gone up dramatically. According to a number of sources, including the Funeral Directors Association, the median cost of a funeral with viewing and burial, et cetera, in 2020 is $9,000. That's just the basics. That doesn't even cover the average additional final expenses, things like medical bills or hospice care at home that's not covered by state benefits. Things like that can easily go $10,000, $20,000 on top of the funeral or cremation cost. The average burial cost in the United States, just for the services, $9,000. In California, for example, that doesn't include the plot. Of course, you need a place to put you in the end at a cemetery or something like that. And then people will think, I'll just get cremated. Cremation has become tremendously popular as the cost of funerals has risen. Cremation, much, much more popular. Well, guess what? With more people being interested in cremation, yes, you guessed it, cremation costs now average $6,000. $6,000. And those are only expected to rise. There's a big inflation when it comes to the cost of burial, whether it be traditional burial in a cemetery or cremation services. So the real question is, as we talk about final expenses, is how can you pay for these expenses and make sure that your loved ones aren't left with the financial burdens, right, after you're gone, right? How can we actually pay for them? Now, one option, of course, is that you can set aside cash. You can set aside cash, stocks, bonds, investments in general to make sure that that is there for that specific purpose. And you can make sure that your kids, your family members know the passwords to the accounts and they know how to get that money. Oh, that's right. It may not be exactly easy to go get that money after you die. So you have to keep that in mind, that the funds might not be easily accessible. Especially if it's in an investment account, the family may not want to sell investments in a down market to pay for your funeral expenses. So just keep that in mind. It's important to know that accessibility is important, right? And there may also be taxes to think about, those kind of things. Now, another option is to consider purchasing a burial plan from a funeral home. Now, these plans from a funeral home, a cemetery type plan, they usually will include a variety of services such as transportation. Some plans you can pay extra to make sure that if you die, let's say you're in New York on a vacation and something bad happens, well, you can pay for services through your funeral home plan to transport your body back to your home state, wherever it is that your funeral has been paid for. You can also have, services, things like, embalming and caskets and cremation urns and things like that. You can definitely do that. Now, there are drawbacks to the funeral home plan, right? For one, they can be super expensive. If you saw that, if you listened earlier, the idea that we've got inflation, right? Well, that's exactly what's happening, is the prices of funeral home plans are going up. And one of the big ways that the funeral homes, the cemetery plans, are paid for, is with insurance plans. It's because a lot of folks don't just have $10,000 laying around to pay for an insurance plan, or excuse me, to pay for a cemetery plan. So the funeral home says, that's okay. We can sell this insurance that will cover the cost of your burial. Lo and behold, what are they selling you? Of course, they're selling life insurance, right? That's one of those things that you have to keep in mind, is that one of the big drawbacks of buying a funeral plan is that you're going to deal with the same inflation as to whether or not you bought it from one company versus another. You're going to end up with inflation. How are they going to cover that? In many cases, they're going to sell you insurance plans that cover that gap or offset that inflation, right? Some funeral home plans may not be transferable if you move to a different location. If you have cemetery plots included, you have to make sure that those plans are transferable. Now, you heard me mention it a moment ago, right? Another option to pay for final expense costs is life insurance-based solution. Now, you can have a life insurance-based solution, much like the ones that a funeral home would sell, that is not just specifically tied to that burial plan, right? By purchasing a life insurance policy specifically designated for final expenses, you can ensure that your loved ones have the funds they need to cover burial and cremation costs, as well as any other leftover miscellaneous debts or expenses that you might leave behind. Now, life insurance policies, they come in a variety of types. They can be customized to fit a specific need and a specific budget, right? Like we said earlier, we were talking earlier that cremation might be your choice. Well, you can either hold $6,000 in a tin can and make sure you don't lose the tin can, and then you have to add more for inflation, or you could buy one life insurance policy that is designated for final expenses, pay one low premium on a monthly basis, for example, and that policy pays when you die, and your family can use that to pay for cremation wherever it is that you might be in the world. Wherever it is, they can use that for your final expenses. It's portable and it never changes. Now, to kind of wrap things up, setting aside cash for purchasing funeral home plans can be an option. You can definitely do that. Going to a funeral home and paying, going through that sales process of buying a full-on funeral plan, you can definitely do that. Keep in mind that when you go to a funeral home, what is it that you're often buying to help pay for that funeral plan? That's right, you're buying life insurance. And in my experience, 25 years doing this, the plans that are often offered by the funeral homes can tend to be really expensive compared to just buying your own standalone final expense whole life insurance policy that pays for a funeral or a cremation, right? So keep that in mind, that the funeral home plan is often based on life insurance to cover it, right? Life insurance-based solutions offer more, in my opinion, more flexibility and just potentially more coverage, because your family can use it wherever you are and for whatever ultimately you decide at the end of your life that you want to do. And I say that because a lot of folks think, I want a funeral without a doubt. I need a funeral. Put me in the ground, and I want 150 people to gather at my funeral and mourn my passing. Well, later in life, how many times have I met people over the decades now that they have changed their mind completely? Now it's just, I don't care. I don't care. Do whatever you want. The kids can cremate me. I don't care if they have a funeral. I don't care. It's a totally different decision. So at that point, wouldn't it be great to have the flexibility of final expense life insurance instead of a hard set plan at a funeral home? The final expense life insurance can actually just be used for whatever it is that you want at the end of life. Now, that's going to wrap it up this time. If you have questions, send me an email, Kraig with a K, Kraig at craigstrom.com. And give this video, if you're watching on YouTube, give it a like, a big old thumbs up. subscribe to the channel. I would love that. And thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful in your search for information about final expense plans and how to set things up to make life easier for your loved ones. Bye for now. Talk to you soon. Hey, it's me again. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me. I really appreciate it. If you like what you heard and you want to be awesome, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or Google Play, or a great comment on YouTube. Wherever you found the content, it would be awesome if you would just go ahead and like it, share it, comment on it. If you want to be totally awesome, do it all. Again, thank you for spending your valuable time with me on the show. Now, for the wicked fun disclosure. Information presented is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as a solicitation of sale for the purchase of any security or financial product. Be sure to first consult with a qualified, hopefully certified, financial planner or advisor and your tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here. And by the way, the term the income engineer is a nationally registered trademark.